Everything your doctor knows about healing was built on a system designed after disease already arrived. Not before it, after. And somewhere between ancient wisdom and modern convenience, we quietly handed over the most powerful disease-fighting system ever created, and replaced it with a waiting room and a prescription pad. Maybe you have been to doctor after doctor. You have sat in those chairs, answered the same questions, taken the same tests, filled the same prescriptions, and walked out with the same hollow feeling that nobody has actually found the root of what is wrong with you. Maybe your body feels like it is fighting a war you never signed up for. Chronic fatigue that sleep does not fix. Inflammation that flares without warning. A heaviness that was not there 5 years ago, and nobody can tell you why it arrived or how to make it leave. Or maybe it is deeper than physical. Maybe there is a quiet ache underneath all of it. The feeling that your body was designed for something better than this. That God did not create you to spend the second half of your life managing symptoms, rotating medications, and shrinking your world down to the size of what your body will allow. Heart disease, chronic inflammation, cancer, type 2 diabetes, these were not the plagues of the ancient world. They are the plagues of ours. And the people who lived closest to God's original design, the prophets, the desert wanderers, the fishing communities of ancient Galilee, they were not dying from what is killing us today. That difference did not happen by accident. What you are about to see are 7 foods, each one referenced or consumed in the ancient biblical world, that modern, peer-reviewed clinical research is now confirming can reduce inflammation at the cellular level, destroy antibiotic-resistant pathogens, and in the case of the final food on this list, interact with cancer cells in ways that are producing results serious enough to appear in oncology journals. This is not spiritual speculation. This is published science catching up to ancient wisdom. If that is the kind of content you have been searching for, not hype, not trends, but real ancient wisdom backed by real modern science, hit subscribe right now before we go any further. Because what we cover every single week on this channel is exactly this. And you do not want to be the person who watches this video, walks away, and never finds their way back. Subscribe. Then stay with me, because what comes next changes everything. Number 4 on this list was carved 200 times into the pillars of the most sacred building a king ever constructed. It contains a compound called punicalagin, found almost nowhere else in nature, and its polyphenol concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries combined. Oncologists studying what it does to inflammatory markers are paying very close attention right now. And number 7, one of 3 gifts carried by kings to honor the most significant birth in human history, contains boswellic acids that have shown in peer-reviewed studies the ability to trigger apoptosis, the programmed self-destruction of cancer cells, in brain tissue, in breast tissue, in pancreatic cells, without touching the healthy cells surrounding them. Researchers are not dismissing this finding, they are trying to understand it. The wisdom was always there. Now we have the science to prove it. Let us begin. The Bible references olive oil over 140 times, not as a symbol, not as a metaphor, as a substance people used on their bodies, in their food, on their wounds, and in their worship, every single day for thousands of years. In Luke chapter 10, a man is beaten, left for dead on a roadside. A stranger stops. He does not pray over him and walk away. He pours oil and wine directly into open wounds. Then he bandages them. Sit with that for a moment. This was not ritual. This was not symbolism. This was a man on a dusty road making a medical decision. And the decision he reached for was olive oil. Because in his world, everyone knew what olive oil did to a wound. Everyone knew what it did to the body. The knowledge was not hidden in a journal. It was common. It was daily. It was alive. Modern science has now confirmed exactly what that roadside healer already knew. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, a polyphenol that operates through the same biological pathway as ibuprofen, inhibiting the same inflammatory enzymes, producing the same reduction in pain and swelling, without the stomach lining damage, without the kidney strain, without the cardiovascular risk that comes with decades of pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory use. Hundreds of clinical trials have linked consistent olive oil consumption to dramatically reduced rates of heart disease, certain cancers, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. The Mediterranean diet, built on olive oil as its cornerstone, is now one of the most clinically validated dietary patterns in the history of nutritional science. Here is what most people do not know. Studies have found that a significant percentage of olive oil sold in supermarkets has been adulterated, cut with cheaper seed oils, mislabeled, and sold as extra virgin when it has never been cold-pressed in its life. The bottle on your shelf may carry the right name and mean almost nothing. Real extra virgin olive oil has a sharp, slightly peppery finish at the back of the throat. That sensation is oleocanthal. If your olive oil tastes like nothing, it is doing nothing. 1 tablespoon of genuine cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil daily. Drizzled over food after cooking, never used as a high-heat frying oil because heat destroys the very compounds that make it medicinal. That is the practice. That is what the ancient world did naturally and what modern science is now prescribing deliberately. Number 2 on this list, never expires. Archaeologists cracked open a 3,000-year-old Egyptian tomb and found it sitting inside, still edible, still biologically active. What they found tells you everything about what this food actually is. Keep watching. Proverbs says, "Eat honey, for it is good." The Song of Solomon speaks of honey and milk beneath the tongue. And in the book of 1 Samuel, Jonathan, exhausted from battle, faint with hunger, dips his rod into a honeycomb. His eyes brightened, his strength returned, immediately. That was not poetry. That was a man whose body responded to something real. Picture the moment archaeologists broke the seal on that ancient Egyptian storage jar. 3,000 years of darkness, 3,000 years of silence, and inside, honey. Not fossilized, not decayed, still golden, still fragrant, still, by every biological measure, edible. They tasted it. Nothing manufactured by modern pharmaceutical science has ever achieved that. Nothing. Modern science has now confirmed why. Raw honey kills pathogens through 3 simultaneous mechanisms. It produces hydrogen peroxide on contact with tissue, it maintains a pH so low that most bacteria cannot survive in it, and it contains a protein called defensin-1 that actively destroys bacterial cell walls, including those of MRSA, the antibiotic-resistant superbug that modern medicine is struggling to defeat. Manuka honey, a specific variety from New Zealand, is now used in certified medical-grade wound dressings in hospitals across the world. This is not alternative medicine, this is hospital medicine. The contrarian truth is this: the honey in your supermarket is not honey in any meaningful biological sense. It has been heated past the temperature that destroys its enzymes. It has been filtered to remove the pollen and the propolis that contain its most active compounds. What remains is sweet, viscous, and almost entirely inert. It shares a name with the real thing. It shares almost nothing else. Raw honey, unheated, unfiltered, sourced from a trusted producer, applied directly to a wound to prevent infection and accelerate healing, taken by the spoonful at the first sign of a cold or sore throat, stirred into warm water with lemon for daily immune maintenance. That is the practice. Simple, direct, documented across 5,000 years of continuous use. Number 3 made an entire nation weep. Battle-hardened desert survivors, people who had endured 40 years of wilderness, broke down and cried for it. When you understand what their bodies were losing, you will understand completely why. Numbers chapter 11, verse 5. The Israelites are in the wilderness. God is providing manna, food appearing miraculously on the ground every morning. And they are not grateful. They are grieving. They sit at the doors of their tents and they weep. And in their weeping, they list the foods they have lost. The fish of Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. These were not soft people. These were men who had survived slavery, escaped an empire, and spent years crossing one of the harshest landscapes on earth. They did not weep easily, and they wept for garlic. Their bodies knew something their language could not fully express. They did not have the word allicin. They did not have the concept of an antimicrobial compound, but they felt the difference in their immune response, in their energy, in the subtle background hum of a body that is working the way it was designed to work. And now, wandering in a wilderness with no garlic, they felt its absence in every cell. Modern science has now confirmed what those wanderers felt in their bones. When garlic is crushed or chopped, it produces allicin, a sulfur compound with broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites operating simultaneously through multiple pathways at once. No single pharmaceutical antibiotic works across all 4 categories. Allicin does. Clinical trials have confirmed that regular garlic consumption reduces the frequency and severity of colds and flu, lowers systolic blood pressure, reduces LDL cholesterol, and provides measurable liver protective effects. Egyptian medical papyri, some of the oldest medical documents ever discovered, list garlic in over 20 separate medicinal preparations. This was not folk superstition. This was a 5,000-year medical curriculum. Here is what most people get completely wrong. The jarred, pre-minced garlic sitting in most refrigerators is biologically inert. The garlic powder on most spice racks contributes almost nothing medicinal. And garlic cooked at high heat, the way most people use it, has had its allicin destroyed before it ever reaches your plate. Allicin is volatile. It forms only when garlic is crushed or cut, and it begins degrading the moment heat arrives. Crush raw garlic. Wait 10 minutes. This activates the enzyme reaction that produces allicin fully. Then eat it directly, mix it into a dressing, spread it on bread with olive oil, or stir it into food just before serving. That 10-minute wait is the difference between medicine and garnish. We are halfway through, and what is coming next has been quietly producing results in cancer research that researchers are choosing their words carefully around. Do not leave. I want to pause for one moment right here, because this is the point in every video where someone watching thinks to themselves, "This is all extraordinary, but where do I actually find the genuine version of these foods? That is exactly the right question. And it matters more than most people realize. Because here is the reality. A large percentage of what is sold as extra virgin olive oil has been adulterated. Most supermarket honey has been stripped of everything that makes it medicinal. And finding authentic sources of the foods we are discussing, foods with the actual biological activity the ancient world relied on, requires research most people do not have time to do. I have done that research. I have found the sources I trust for every single food on this list, and I have linked all of them in the description below. Not as a sales pitch, but because quality is not optional here. The difference between the real version and the supermarket version of these foods is the difference between medicine and marketing. Check the description. Everything is there. Now, number 4. Solomon built the most sacred structure in the ancient world and covered its entrance pillars with the image of a single fruit. 200 of them. When you see why, you will understand that he was not decorating. He was declaring something. Stand at the entrance to Solomon's temple and look up. 2 massive bronze pillars, and carved into them, repeated 200 times, the same image. A pomegranate. Not a lion, not a sword, not a crown. A fruit. When the wisest and wealthiest king in the ancient world chose what to place at the threshold of the most sacred building he ever constructed, he chose this fruit. That choice was not aesthetic. It was a statement about value, about power, about what this fruit represented to a civilization that understood the relationship between food and life at a level we are only now beginning to recover. Modern science has now confirmed what Solomon knew in the marrow of his architectural instincts. Pomegranates contain a compound called punicalagin, found in significant concentration in almost no other food on Earth, that breaks down in the gut into molecules called urolithins. These compounds have demonstrated anti-inflammatory and potential anti-cancer effects in published research that has the nutrition science world paying serious attention. The polyphenol concentration in pomegranate outranks red wine, outranks green tea, outranks blueberries. Clinical trials have documented significant reductions in blood pressure, LDL oxidation, and C-reactive protein, one of the primary inflammatory markers linked to cardiovascular disease and cancer risk. Here is what almost everyone throws away: the rind. The thick outer skin that most people discard the moment they cut open a pomegranate contains a higher concentration of medicinal compounds than the fruit itself. Traditional healers across the ancient Middle East used pomegranate rind tea for gut infections, intestinal parasites, and inflammatory conditions for centuries. Modern research is confirming the antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory mechanisms behind every one of those traditional applications. Eat the seeds fresh. Drink fresh-pressed juice with the pulp intact, and take the rind, dried or fresh, steep it in hot water for 10 minutes, and drink it as a medicinal tea when your gut is inflamed or infected. Nothing about this is complicated. Everything about it is supported. Number 5. Healed a dying king. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, physically. A king with a death sentence, a wound that was killing him, and a fruit pressed onto that wound that changed the outcome. The science behind what happened is extraordinary. 2 Kings chapter 20. King Hezekiah is dying, not aging, not declining, dying, from what the text describes as a severe boil, a deep infected wound that had progressed to the point where his death was being announced before it happened. The prophet Isaiah comes to him, and Isaiah does something that has puzzled readers for 3,000 years. He does not only pray, he instructs the king's servants to take a cake of figs and press it directly onto the wound. They do, and Hezekiah recovers. For centuries, that instruction sat in Scripture treated as a footnote, a strange ritual detail, something to move past on the way to the miracle. Then, researchers began studying figs, and everything Isaiah instructed suddenly made biological sense. Modern science has now confirmed that figs contain phycin, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down necrotic tissue, the dead and infected matter that surrounds a serious wound and prevents healing. Phycin actively clears the wound bed. Alongside phycin, figs contain documented antimicrobial compounds, including benzaldehyde and psoralins, that inhibit bacterial growth in infected tissue. Isaiah was not performing a ritual. He was applying a poultice with a measurable biological mechanism for wound debridement and infection control. Beyond wound care, figs contain soluble fiber, specifically pectin, that feeds the beneficial bacteria in the gut with a precision that modern prebiotic supplements are trying to replicate. Their mineral density is extraordinary. Magnesium, potassium, calcium, B vitamins. Per gram, figs rival any multivitamin on a health store shelf and deliver those minerals in a whole food matrix the body was designed to absorb. The contrarian reality is this. Most people think of figs as a sweet, dried fruit, a jam ingredient, a Newton biscuit filling. They have no framework for figs as medicine. But in the ancient world, figs were the supplement. They were the wound dressing. They were the gut support. And the science is confirming every one of those applications in peer-reviewed research. Fresh figs at peak ripeness for gut health and immediate nutrition. Dried figs year-round for sustained mineral intake. And mashed fresh figs applied directly to inflamed or infected skin. A practice with 3,000 years of documented use and an active enzyme mechanism that modern wound care science is taking increasingly seriously. Number 6 has been studied in over 3,000 published clinical trials. 3,000. It has been used in every major ancient healing tradition that touched the biblical world. Most people walk past it in the spice aisle every week without knowing what it does to the molecular switch that drives cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's simultaneously. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the ancient spice routes. Vast desert roads stretching from India through Persia, through Arabia, through the lands of the Bible, all the way to the Mediterranean coast. Caravans moving slowly across the heat. Traders carrying goods that were worth more than gold by weight. Spices, medicines, remedies. And among everything moving along those roads, this golden root. Turmeric. No one along those routes had the vocabulary of NFKB pathways or cytokine cascades or molecular inflammation markers. They had no electron microscopes, no biochemistry labs, no double-blind trial protocols. What they had was generations of observation. Healers watching patients, recording outcomes, passing knowledge forward. And generation after generation, continent after continent, every major healing tradition that intersected with the ancient world arrived at the same conclusion about this golden root. It worked. Modern science has now confirmed the mechanism behind what those healers were observing. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, directly inhibits NFKB, the molecular transcription factor that functions as the master switch for chronic inflammation in the human body. When NFKB is activated, it triggers the inflammatory cascade that underlies heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, rheumatoid arthritis, and the majority of autoimmune conditions simultaneously. Curcumin turns it off. Over 3,000 published studies have examined curcumin's effects on the human body. Clinical trials on rheumatoid arthritis have found curcumin reducing joint inflammation and pain comparably to pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories, without the gastrointestinal damage, without the cardiovascular risk, without the organ stress of long-term drug use. Here is what almost no one tells you. Curcumin consumed on its own is almost entirely wasted. The body absorbs it extremely poorly. Most passes through without entering the bloodstream in meaningful concentration. But add piperine, the active compound in black pepper, and bioavailability increases by up to 2,000%. 2,000. The ancient spice blends of India and the Middle East that combined turmeric and black pepper were not created for flavor. They were biological delivery systems operating with a precision that modern pharmacology is only now fully mapping. A daily pinch of turmeric combined with black pepper and a small amount of healthy fat in warm water, in golden milk, stirred into food, is one of the simplest and most scientifically supported anti-inflammatory interventions available to any human being on Earth right now. It costs almost nothing. It has been available for thousands of years, and most people have never been told why it actually works. One food remains. I told you at the beginning that this one would stop you. Kings carried it across the ancient world to honor the most significant birth in human history. And what oncologists have recently confirmed it does inside the human body, to cancer cells specifically at the cellular level, is producing results that are making researchers stop and look very carefully at what the ancient world already knew. Gold, frankincense, myrrh, three gifts carried by kings across desert roads to the place where a child had been born. Kings who had access to anything the ancient world contained, who could have brought silk or silver or the rarest spices from the furthest reaches of the known world. And of the three things they chose to carry, one of them was frankincense. Not as decoration, not as fragrance, as medicine. The most medically significant substance those kings possessed, the one they considered worthy of this moment. Think about the weight of that choice. Think about what it says about how deeply the ancient world understood what frankincense actually was. Modern science has now confirmed what those kings carried in their hands. Frankincense resin, drawn from the boswellia tree, contains a group of compounds called boswellic acids, primarily AKBA, that inhibit 5-lipoxygenase, a key enzyme driving the inflammatory pathway directly linked to tumor growth and cancer progression. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have documented something that is difficult to read without stopping to absorb it fully. Frankincense extract has demonstrated the ability to trigger apoptosis in cancer cells. Apoptosis, the programmed self-destruction of the cancer cell itself. Not damage from outside, not immune system attack. The cancer cell receiving a signal and destroying itself from within. In brain cancer cell lines, in breast cancer cell lines, in colon and pancreatic cancer cell lines, without measurable harm to the healthy cells surrounding them. Oncologists are not dismissing this. They are studying it, carefully, methodically, with the sober attention that results this significant demand. For centuries, frankincense was filed away as incense, a church smell, a ceremonial leftover from a world that no longer existed. The biology was present the entire time. The mechanism was operating whether anyone understood it or not. The ancient world did not have the language of molecular oncology, but they watched what frankincense did to sick bodies, and they valued it accordingly. Above silver, above silk, alongside gold. Modern oncology is now, quietly and seriously, arriving at the same place those kings were standing 2,000 years ago. Therapeutic-grade frankincense essential oil diffused for respiratory inflammation and anxiety. Boswellia supplement, the standardized extract of frankincense resin, for inflammatory conditions, joint pain, and as part of a comprehensive approach to long-term disease prevention. Always food-grade or therapeutic-grade sources. The quality of the source determines the concentration of the active compounds. Never compromise on this one. And here is what ties all 7 of these foods together into a single truth that the ancient world understood and the modern world is spending billions of dollars rediscovering. These foods were not random. They were not coincidental. The people who referenced them in sacred texts, who carried them across deserts, who pressed them onto wounds and stirred them into bread and built them into the architecture of their most sacred spaces. They were paying attention. With their eyes, with their bodies, with generations of careful, accumulated, hard-won observation. And now, with all of our technology, all of our laboratory instruments, all of our clinical trial infrastructure, we keep walking in and finding that they were right. 7 foods, thousands of years, and modern science, with all of its precision and funding, keeps arriving at the same conclusions the ancient world reached simply by watching what healed people and what did not. Olive oil reduces inflammation through the same pathway as ibuprofen, without the damage. Raw honey destroys antibiotic-resistant bacteria through 3 simultaneous mechanisms that no pharmaceutical has replicated. Garlic produces allicin, a broad-spectrum antimicrobial active against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites at once. Pomegranate contains punicalagin, a compound found almost nowhere else in nature that is being studied for its effects on cancer and cardiovascular disease simultaneously. Figs contain a proteolytic enzyme that debrides wounds the way a prophet prescribed to a dying king 3,000 years ago. Turmeric inhibits the molecular switch that drives the majority of chronic disease in the modern world. And frankincense, carried by kings to honor a birth, is being studied in oncology departments right now for its ability to trigger the self-destruction of cancer cells. The ancient people were not primitive. They were observant. They paid close attention to what healed them, what sustained them, and what kept disease away. And they built their culture, their rituals, their architecture, and their sacred texts around those observations. The wisdom was never wrong. We simply stopped listening. Start today. Not with all 7. Start with 1. Pick the food from this list that spoke to something in you and bring it into your life this week. Your body was not designed to be chronically ill. It was not designed to be medicated into a manageable state. It was designed to be well. It just needs what it was originally built to receive. Tell me in the comments right now, which of these 7 superfoods surprised you most? Are you starting with olive oil, going straight for the garlic, or are you the kind of person who goes directly for the frankincense? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment, every one. And if something in this video confirmed what you already believed in your spirit, type confirmed in the comments right now. Not for me, for the person scrolling through the comments at 3 in the morning who needs to see that someone else believes it too. Your word could be the thing that shifts everything for them. If you are still on the fence about subscribing, tell me why in the comments. Genuinely, what is holding you back? I want to know. And if you are still here, if you watched this entire video, then something brought you to this content today. I do not think that was an accident. Every week on this channel, someone finds a video like this one and something shifts. Something they have been carrying for years. Confusion, frustration, the exhaustion of searching for answers that the standard system was never designed to give them. Something moves. And in that moment, they have a choice. They subscribe and keep going deeper. Or they close the tab and go back to what was not working. Do not be the person who finds this and walks away. Every week, we go deeper into the plants ancient healers used that modern medicine has almost completely forgotten, into the foods that fed prophets and kings, into the remedies that were common knowledge for thousands of years before someone decided there was no profit in them, into the wisdom that has been waiting, patiently, quietly, for us to come back to it. Next week, we are covering something that will make this video look like the introduction, and if you are not subscribed, you will not see it. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, join this community, because this is not a content channel. This is a community of people who have decided to take their health back the way God originally designed. People who believe the body was built to heal. People who are done waiting for a system that was never built to tell them the full truth. Your greatest years of health are not behind you. They are ahead. I will see you in the next one.